Okay, so we're recording. Ayla, thanks for being here. This is 2 years in the making, isn't it? After all the technical difficulties we just had, I'm glad that we finally kind of got to a place where we can actually have a relaxed conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. But first and foremost, how you feeling? Because I know you were going through stuff with your health and kind of navigating that the last few months. So how's all that and how are you feeling at the moment?
Well, it's always a big question for me at the moment. And yeah, to honestly answer that question, um I feel like I'm in the birth canal. I feel like I'm in a time of my life where I'm being really squeezed through the canal into in a time of healing and being birthed into a new space, a new phase, a new chapter, and a kind of more wholeness in my whole system, in myself. And it's a really, really hard time for me. I feel exceedingly challenged every day, almost every moment. But I'm really going with a lot of courage and a lot of commitment and dedication and devotion into listening to my body and to my heart and my soul. And this has meant pulling back a lot from life, from my work, and just tending. It's like this word tending is really key for me at the moment, tending to myself, to the fire of myself, and learning to take care, and um, learning to be able to give from a fullness. And it's good, it's a blessing, it's amazing, it's horrible, it's everything. It's a real mixture.
Have you felt like you've
Yeah,
been in this place before at all?
I have. Yeah, I've had many I guess it's the classic, what people call the dark night of the soul. I feel like I've had
Mm,
many of these nights, many chapters, many phases, but what I'm experiencing now, I have definitely not experienced as it is and I guess life is, we would always say that, wouldn't we? It's never the same as it was before, but it does feel like I'm reaching um deeper places than I ever have done. It's kind of like I sometimes see healing processes, people talk about the onion, don't they? It's like the layer, this skin, and we get deeper and deeper, and I'm seeing it a bit more like the sludge. You know, like you get deeper and deeper into the water, and then you get to that stuff at the bottom that's like, like the 100,000-year-old stuff, your sludgy kind of the stuff that you don't really want to be sifting through, but it's there, and it's calling me.
mm.
So yeah, it feels quite big time.
What have you found most challenging to kind of let go of right now in terms of whatever it was that was part of maybe your daily routine or you were kind of used to or was part of your comfort and you've had to kind of maybe take a step back from it?
Hmm. I guess it's like my old way of being, and it's in some ways it's a funny thing to say, because um there's so much of me that wants to and feels ready to leave behind that old way of being, and especially the aspects that are not ultimately serving me and ultimately nourishing me and allowing me to thrive, like the shadow, the trauma, the patterns, the programming that is not serving my highest and my truth. But somehow that's really hard to let go of. I guess I see I've lived a lifetime in certain ways of being, certain programming, certain behavioral patterns, and it's not something that just happens like that. It's like really, really, really deep, letting go of these ways of being wired and allowing new wiring into my system. So I'm a lot working with my nervous system, and the way that my whole body is running from a certain kind of programming in my nervous system, which essentially is on this fight, flight, or freeze mode, survival mode. And I have these days where I'm like, oh, just please, like, what can I do to step really fully into a new way of being and to really let go? But it's really, really challenging. It's
It's a journey,
not
isn't it? Yeah,
simple.
for sure. Yeah, so talking about kind of physical, the physical shedding or the physical sensations, let's say, of the body, and that being the challenge, I kind of went through that version of it for myself in 2012. That's when it began, and it's kind of lasted 10 years. I feel like only now maybe I'm coming home to myself, I guess, building a new
Mm,
relationship with my body and my nervous system. And it's almost like it
mhm,
was going through an upgrade. That's the best way to kind of describe it. And like the snake shedding its skin, and
mhm,
being reborn. And there's, like you said, there's many kind of rebirths that happen along the way. But then you have these big markers where
mm,
the before and after, you can clearly feel and see that you're going to be a different person.
mhm. Yeah,
So
it's almost like the more challenging it is, the more potential there is for that, for the bigger the step to be. But the effort and the showing up that it requires, what I really begin to learn in life is like, there is a certain amount of our kind of journey of being a human being that's just happening as we're ripening and we're learning and we're growing. There's a kind of certain amount that's just really natural. And then there's a certain amount that's like, whoa, if I don't show up to this, I'm not necessarily going to move forward. Like coming back to this image of like being in the birth canal, I've sometimes felt like I'm the baby being born, but I'm also the mother giving birth.
mm,
And yes, there is also just a force of life and nature, like in birth. There is just that force, that mysterious force that is supporting the whole thing, guiding, feeding, fueling the whole thing. But a lot is up to the mother and a lot is up to the baby. And somehow we're both in these
yeah, it's in the
doorways.
being, being of whatever you're going through, kind of bringing a level of presence to it, that you may not feel comfortable doing. And that is part of the, I guess, the process or the journey of evolution, of germination, of growth, to show up to those uncomfortable situations and kind of just sit with that and ask your body and ask your
Mm,
spirit, what is it you need from me right now? What is it I need to, like you said, tend to? um
mm,
and I found a lot of the time it's counter to what I've been conditioned to think, which is, okay, I want to do something about this, but actually I need to slow down and just allow it to be. Because, like you said, there is this
mhm,
force, this intelligence that is doing its work. Like when you water you plant a seed, you water it, but that's it. You can't really do much more than that. The force of nature will take
mm,
its course,
mm,
and it will germinate and it will grow and it will begin to blossom in its own time, because things also happen with seasons. That's the other thing I've
mm,
began to realize is I can almost kind of feel there's a shift in season happening, at certain periods in my life, and I'm feeling that right now. And that's why I resonate with kind of what you shared about your health, albeit it's showing up in a different form for you. It's almost a shifting of seasons.
mm, mm. Absolutely. I have been also seeing it in that way. I've been sometimes when I describe it, I say like my body is asking me for a winter, exactly you say, like coming in, slowing down, and really it's like going down deep into the earth, where it may look like from the outside, sometimes I'm literally like, oh my God, I'm dying, not, I don't mean it in a like super melodramatic way, but it's like, what's going on with my body? Why do I feel so awful? Why is it difficult for me to move? Why is it hurting? Like all these symptoms that come under this umbrella of chronic conditions. I what they say is it's called chronic fatigue, but I know that it's like that's just a name for something that's
Mm,
really, really mysterious. And there's so many different ways that the body starts speaking in these so many different chronic conditions, how that manifests for people. And it's like, yeah, really learning to actually listen to the body and look at the past way of being, which most probably for all of us, certainly for me, has been a pattern of essentially being disconnected from my body, overriding the wisdom of my body, overriding my needs, physical and non-physical, and just kind of living in a totally unsustainable way. And it's so complex. And that first stop of just like stepping back and kind of surrendering, like you would see with the trees, how they let go of their leaves, how they draw their energy in, how they go down to the earth, and they're not, I guess they don't experience fear. Our mind, this is one of our great challenges on healing journeys, and just kind of going with that trust, but letting go and entering that space. There is a death, essentially, death of old ways of being, and it has to be like that to allow this new energy to come, this new way, this new, like you said, upgrade. I like that, an upgraded version of ourselves to birth.
yeah, it's almost like what I feel like. It's almost like as the old layers shed, or who we once were sheds, we're continually on this journey of becoming, um, and letting go of who we once were and who we are, to then become and step into the next version of ourselves. But as we do that, we're moving closer and closer to our highest potential, or our spirit, or our highest self, whatever you want to call it, God energy. And
Mm,
it's like you're almost kind of shedding your clothes to become naked, and
mm,
that the clothes are, the metaphor for your identity. You let go of all of that, everything that you've learned,
mm,
you unlearn, and then you relearn in a new way of
mhm,
being. But the person who's relearning isn't the same person who let go. It's a completely
mm,
different being now, right? So
mm,
it's reintroducing yourself to your body and to your mind and to your life in every
mm,
season. That's what I found, especially this year, because I went through a transition earlier this year as well, stepping into um, a higher calling of work, a higher purpose that was kind of guiding me the last few years, and then kind of blossomed a few months ago. And I felt the calling to let go of the job that I was in, and open myself to a new possibility, to a new transition, to a new identity, essentially, and to step into that. But then
mm,
the beliefs that came with that, the limitations that came with that, the mindset, the daily routine, the rhythm, inner conversation, the script about who I am and what I do, all of
mm,
that begins to change and fall away as you step into, okay, who is this new person I am becoming?
mhm, mhm,
So yeah,
mm,
it is an exciting journey. One thing I was curious about is, I heard your the first time I heard your music, um, which has obviously been a big part of your life, and why a lot of people know you, was after a cacao ceremony, and I think someone played the song, or they recommended it, and I went on YouTube and listened to it. And you listen to, there's some people that you listen to and you can almost feel, if you're tapped into it, that they're channeling something else. It's not almost them singing, they're a channel for something, right, when they get into that state. and you're one of them. Like I could just feel, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but I could just feel the pure beauty and the depth of spirit through your voice. And that's why I was like, this person has found a part of themselves connected to something else, and
Mm,
has stepped into a part of their gift. So first of all, want to acknowledge that and honor
mm,
that, and secondly, kind of to talk about how that journey began. I think you were born in the UK, right? To kind of understand where your interest for music came from, and kind of go from there.
mm. Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed the way you just said that. Found a part of yourself connected to something else. I think that's how you said it.
Mm.
And
By the way, just before you go into that, sorry to break your train of thought, would you mind just clipping the microphone slightly higher
to make it a bit louder,
if you can? If you can, yeah, if you can.
like that.
Yeah, perfect,
Dee-dee-dee-doo-doo-doo-doo.
perfect. Yeah, perfect.
So music was always part of my life. My mum really nourished creativity in our home, and um, I always loved to sing. I remember singing like, Disney, really loud, like Disney songs, like about Prince Charming and stuff like this, and would just sing my heart out. It was something that um, just made me feel good. I just remember it made me feel good. But it really began like my more personal, um, kind of deeper journey with my voice and with sound and with music began definitely in those teenage years of like 15, 16. That was the age, 14, 15, 16, when I started discovering other artists, and being touched, like you're saying, like being touched by music in a more profound way. And my mum bought me a guitar. I think I was 16, and immediately for me to sit with my guitar and allow whatever moved through, I started writing songs really straight away in a very kind of free flow. You just like bam, whatever. I used to press. I had a little dictaphone, the little tape recorders. I used to just press record, and whatever came out, I was like, "That's the song." I didn't change anything about it. And yeah, coming back to what you said, without realizing, I wasn't really aware of what was happening, but I was connecting to a part of myself that was connected to something bigger than myself. And already from that age, I would go to music really from my place of struggle, and the pain and the kind of overwhelming states that I just would find myself in a lot as a young woman in a house that felt very unsafe, very volatile, a lot of um what words to give it, like, yeah, kind of destructive emotional energy around me, and feeling so much that I didn't know how to feel, didn't know how to feel safe in my own body, in my own feelings. And in that kind of vulnerable, very raw um, state of feeling, of emotion, of being in myself, that was how I'd bring myself to music. Nearly always. It wasn't something I did out of joy. It was something out of like, oh, this is so much what I'm feeling right now. What do I do with this? Ah, here's music. And music gave like like a huge dam or something, it gave a way, it gave a channel, a path for that energy to flow in me, to find release, to find expression, to find understanding, and yeah, to find a place of safety within myself. It was a place that felt safe for me, my own little world, me, myself, songs, sound, my guitar. And I didn't know it at the time, but yes, I am sure I was using that vessel of music to connect and open myself up to forces greater than myself. And I'm sure that that is a part of the peace that I felt. And I do remember from quite a young age beginning to have some awareness of angels, of angelic energies, and yeah, the beauty is I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't trying to connect to anything. I wasn't trying to do anything. I was doing it really out of um I don't know if desperation, maybe desperation is not quite the right word, but um like a seeking of support in something that was very challenging. And it's continued to be like this, really, for me. And it's changed, it takes its different forms. I've grown, I have changed, my awareness has expanded. A lot of things have changed, but there's an essence there that's still the same. Music connects me to myself and through myself to something beyond, and that simply it gives me strength, and I find peace. I find peace there.
You remember the first song that you wrote or sang?
Yeah, very vaguely. I wouldn't be able to sing it or play it, but yeah,
Yeah.
it was one of these, like, you know, that age about being around 15 where it's like, why is the world I started to kind of it was a why song. Why is the world like this? Why is there so much suffering? Why are people so greedy? Why? It was very, very sweet. Very sweet. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, One thing you said was you kind of you brought yourself in this when you were moving into the space of music. Every time you sat down with your guitar or to write, you were in a raw and kind of vulnerable space. And do you think that's important for creativity now, looking at it in hindsight, or even your process now, to be that open? I think there's something to that, to be your to bring your truest self to it, or to be as open as possible. There's some connection between being vulnerable, and whether that means there was positive or negative emotions, whatever you want to call them, that you're feeling, but some sense of vulnerability that you're feeling, some openness that then allows some level of creativity to become art, rather than trying. Like you said, you weren't trying to do anything.
Mm,
And I think as artists, it needs to be from a place of just being, and it becomes a natural expression of who you are. And the reason I bring that up is because it's what I felt when I was writing a couple of years ago. So when I first reached out to you around that time that year, I wrote a poetry book, which I published last year. And that was the first time that I had reconnected to writing in that way. I'd
mm,
never, it was didn't feel like something I needed to do or I wanted
mm,
to do, I planned to do. It was literally like, um, you mentioned the metaphor of a dam earlier on. It was like something was breaking within me, and that breaking started in 2019. But there was so much of the ocean gushing through me. It had that
mm,
there had to be an outlet, and the outlet just happened to be writing. And that was my way of expressing all of the emotions I was feeling, the questions I had, the perspectives that I was shifting, the things I was experiencing, which were pretty much ineffable. It was all an internal experience that was
mm,
happening. But I was like, I want to give words to this because that feels like therapy. That feels like fun as well, to be able to create something out of what I'm feeling.
mm, mm. Yeah, I mean, I guess mostly I can speak from myself, my own experience, because I am sure that each artist, whether that's musician or whatever kind of art expression, will have their fuel, will have their doorways, will have their ways that moves through them. But it is kind of known as the classic, isn't it? Like the kind of like tortured artist kind of thing who's like somehow using that as like wood for the fire of their creativity. And I think it's interesting to ask this question about vulnerability and openness, and what is what is openness. I mean, when we're open, we're vulnerable, like, because we're not closed, so we don't have, whether that's our shields or whatever, our protective mechanisms. It's like we see, particularly in the English culture, to be kind of in our emotionality and um, open with expressing it, like walk around open in our emotions, is just not how our culture has kind of programmed us to be, actually, because we're vulnerable. There's an exposure there, but it makes sense that through that open state and that vulnerability with ourselves, actually, primarily, it's like to be open and vulnerable with ourselves, it draws, there's an energy that I experience, like it draws me deeper into myself if I allow it to. This again isn't a given, because there's many ways of, I feel open, I feel vulnerable, like do ways to make myself feel safe, run away, keep myself busy, people who, drinking or smoking or whatever the things that we do. But when we can listen, I really believe that our emotions, like our our primary emotions, like if you want to talk about it like that, like really the emotions that come from the truth of our being, our feelings, not the emotions that come from our kind of madness of our mind. There's a lot of emotions that can come from here, just kind of rattling along. But I do honestly believe that these true feelings come from deep within us, and there's so much wisdom there, there's so much guidance, there's so much messages to be listened to. And by going, allowing ourselves to be drawn into the center, into that vulnerability, I mean, it's such a precious, beautiful vulnerability. When we can go there and feel safe, this is really vulnerability. When we don't feel safe, doesn't feel good. But when we can feel safe, and whatever that means for us, for me, music creates like a blanket of safety, that I can go there because I feel held by myself, and by the sound, by the force of the music, by the spirits that come with the music, and for sure whatever else is beyond in the circles around me. I feel safe to go into that garden. It's like the garden of the most exquisite flowers in that space, the most delicate, needs so much care, but there's so much beauty there.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
what was your mom doing to kind of nurture the creativity within you? And was she in the realm of music herself as well?
She No, I mean, my mum had children young and never really lived her dreams, and had a very difficult life. So I think she carried with her this love for music that she didn't necessarily live out. She loved to sing, here and there, and she played the piano, but it wasn't something um that she did a lot of. But I think she had a great value for creativity, whether it was music or art or dance. She really, really valued that, and she would just nurture us as children. We went to all kinds of different classes. I feel like I was endlessly going to like different dance classes, or whatever we expressed an interest in, she would really respond to that. So I played different instruments as a child, and um, yeah, she was like, the rain, just putting the drops in the right moment, in the right ways.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, that's. I was just talking to my dad yesterday about that, actually, about how we were talking about alternative education, and how Montessori school, their whole philosophy is around following the curiosity of the child, and this whole
Mm,
notion of you don't need to feed knowledge into the child, you help them extract the wisdom
yeah.
they already have and nurture that and follow where they go, because they are a
Mm,
pure unconditioned spirit at a certain point in time. And if you can capture that and nurture that, you kind of
yeah.
then condition them or help them navigate that as they grow up. Whereas most of us kind of forget because then we go into nursery and then, primary school, secondary school, and there's a set curriculum. And so you have to
mm,
fit a certain way of being and measuring up.
mm,
And you kind of forget about the small joys that could have turned into wildfires if you followed those sparks and
mm,
nurtured them. But it
mm,
takes someone to consciously help you do that, right? So it's amazing that your mom
mm.
was there to do that.
Yeah, I really appreciate, and I see, like, without her having been the mother that she was, who knows how my path would have gone. Maybe it would have taken me many more years, but I also believe somehow we choose our parents. We choose
Mm,
that space that we come in that will give us what we need, and that's not only the beautiful parts, that's also the pain and the trauma and all the stuff it's all ultimately fuel for our soul walking our path, learning what we need to learn and gathering the tools, whether it's a guitar or whether it's like
yeah,
how to sit with pain, Yeah. Yeah,
it's
thank you, my mummy.
I feel like there's two different journeys that we're on, and I've been sitting with this the last few years. It's the physical human body, and the lifespan that we have in this physical body that we're inside of right now. But then also you mentioned the soul journey, which is the bigger expansion of the universe and the natural flow of um, unfolding, I guess. And a part of that expansion and unfolding from the grand scheme of things, if you were to take a bird's eye view of the universe, then being in this body and having all these tools and these people around us is part of that expansion, because you may feel some beauty in this direction and you follow that and that helps you grow. You feel some friction in this direction, but if you're
Mm,
willing to lean into it, that
mhm,
friction then helps you reflect on what you can do to grow, or who you become to be able to
mm,
navigate that, or to endure that, or to grow from that in whatever way. And so
mm,
yeah, it's this beautiful balance between honoring the fact that yes, I'm in this body that has these five senses and I'm going to feel pain and pleasure, but I'm also a soul who's probably lived a million times
mm.
before in different bodies and got to this point of evolution. Now I get to have this experience. And so yeah, there's just beauty in it, just thinking of it that way. I don't know if you've ever thought of it that way.
Well, definitely, I think about it a lot like that because it helps me. It's zooming out, isn't it, to the kind of the bigger perspective. There's there's so much suffering that can come from being kind of really stuck into the details and into the past and into the future, and just that remembering of who am I in my essence? Am I this difficult experience? Am I this part of me that's fighting and struggling and not enjoying and not getting what I want or whatever? Like there's a lot of pain on this earth that we experience, but to remember like that pain can actually be a doorway to to it's like the pain guides us through that doorway to the place where we know that we are untouchable, where our essence is beyond that pain, and that can give a lot a lot of rest actually in the moments of suffering. I use this, I think about this a lot, and I use this tool of asking myself, who am I? And not answering it. It's not something that can be answered in words, but like allowing those words to actually just connect me like, wow, okay, I can feel that's my heart beating. I can feel somehow a sense of I'm not I'm not these experiences. This is my school, this is my teachings. And especially I find Eckhart Tolle, he talks quite a lot about these kinds of things in a very beautiful way, and to this kind of remembering that like this is what we wanted to experience, on a soul level. We came here for all of this experience, and it's a hard one. It's not an easy thing to say, because there are some horrors out there on the earth that it's just very, very hard to really trust that. like, wow, that awful thing, or the awful things that happen to children, or the war, like, that's what your soul came here for. It's very easy to say, and I don't say it lightly. I don't at all want to make light of my own pain and suffering, or anyone's pain or suffering, but somehow, to be honest, it helps me to understand the pain of the world, to somehow trust in God, ultimately.
Well, this
Like,
is the beauty of it, right? Regardless of what's going on, you get to choose how you think about the course of events that are happening. We get to choose how we want to see it. We get to choose how we want to perceive it, what it means to us. You can change the meaning. And as soon as you do that, isn't it weird how you change the meaning of suffering from one of this is actually here to benefit me, to help me grow, to rebirth me, to upgrade me, from why is this happening to me? Because I was in that space for a long time. Why is this
yeah,
happening to me, especially with my health stuff happening at its peak? And everyone else is out partying and drinking and having fun. And I'm like, but
yeah,
why me right now? And no one else has to go through this.
yeah,
But you begin there. And then it's a journey
yeah,
of beginning to have compassion for yourself, for others. And the weird thing is, the more you come home to yourself, the more through the suffering that happens, or the perceived suffering that happens, the more you then feel connected to everyone else and everything else. There
mm,
starts to become a softness about it that I get it.
mm,
You're going through stuff. You're a human being. It's not going to be easy to go through it. But that's what we're all here for. We're all on stage basically performing together at this time and doing the best we can.
mm, mm. Yeah, it's beautiful that you're sharing little bits of your experience and your healing journey. And I just can really resonate. Like you said, it's a place where we start with this, oh, why me? And this is so awful and poor me. And it's the victim role. And I know this really, really well. I still go in and out of that. I still have days going there like, oh God, this is so hard. And why is this happening? And what am I doing wrong? And But ultimately I begin to realize, like, what helps me is not that energy. There can actually, I do experience, there can be moments that there is a helpfulness in just like really allowing ourselves to be. So there's a really loud fly buzzing around. Um, Giving ourselves permission to allow those voices, and not like, oh no, no, I can't do the victim thing. I put you in a box and lock you away, and then they stay there going like, I'm still here feeling sorry for
Mm,
myself, taking energy, and you haven't actually tended to me. And I think a particular work that I'm at with myself at the moment is like, wow, here's all of those voices, here's all the parts, like the poor me, and this is so hard, and I'm so afraid, and I can't do it, and I'm a failure, and you're a failure, and I don't even know what parts of me are talking to what. But I'm learning that unless I sit with them really and go like, I really hear you, like, wow, I really hear that part of you, Isla, that is going like, this is so hard, I hate this, I wish this wasn't happening, why is it happening to me? If I hear that, it's like, it's almost like the ice can start to thaw or something. If I deny her, you're not, no, that's not evolved enough, you need to be like in your power, it just doesn't work. And for me, it's quite a game changer. And it's not about wallowing in those voices. Oh yeah, I feel so sorry for myself, I'm just going to stay here and like, oh poor me, and not get out of bed. And it's like, I hear you, I listen to you, I'm listening, thank you, I deeply approve of you, and like, come, like, we breathe into the power, we breathe into our prayer, we focus, we focus forward together with all those parts of ourselves, which essentially is our power. because abandoned, denied aspects of ourselves is like locking away. In that room there's that locked voice, in that room there's that locked voice. This is all our energy, this is all aspects of ourselves that we're not whole, we're not complete unless we move with all of them. And for me it's like the carriage, if you could look at it like the carriage that is carrying it all has to be just a huge amount of love and compassion and acceptance and embracing. And it's quite amazing to feel how those voices, they kind of, it's not necessarily they completely transform, but it's almost like they go, oh yeah, okay, I really felt heard by you. Oh, I now can kind of like move into my next phase or something, you know, a bit like a caterpillar, like, oh now I've been heard, I can kind of like turn into my, the energy can start to move.
It all begins to almost move in the same direction rather than some downstream, some upstream, because
Yes.
you're not allowing it to come
Yeah.
in, to embrace it. So there's two things that come up
Yeah.
for me there. One is definitely, yeah, like a wholeness of being comes from being able to sit with that and just allow yourself to see that voice, to hear it, because that is essentially another version of you, a prior version of you. So to lock it away is to suppress it. So there's a part of you that you
Mm.
just aren't showing up in your fullness of being with, um
Mm.
because that part is never allowed in. And I wonder what would be on the other side of integrating all of those voices. Second thing
Mm.
is, which I've been sitting with recently over the past probably 6 to 8 months, is when the voices do come up, whatever they may be saying, whose voice is that actually? Because a lot of the time,
Mm.
the voices that we have in our head, more often than not, what I found is an echo of someone else's. It's not your own intuition. It's not your own
Mm.
reflections.
Mhm.
They're not your own beliefs
Mm.
that you've handpicked and consciously created. That this is what I'm going to feel about my life, believe about my life,
Mm.
um, and move forward in that direction with these new perceptions based on who I
Mm.
am. But actually, it's an echo of someone else's voice, or parents, or teachers, or whatever. And then you're
Mm.
running off that old story, and that kind of creates a prison for you. So it's when
Mm.
all of this chaos is coming up to the surface. Someone said to me, who was it that said to me, yeah, it was one of my friends, Emma, who I had on the podcast a few weeks ago. She said she'd done a lot of work the last few years and seen the therapist, coaches, blah blah blah, and then she was in a really good place, or she thought, with her business and relationship, etc. And then some level of trauma came up to the surface, and she was like, well, I thought I dealt with this. What's going on? Everything's going so well, why is this happening now? But what she realized was her nervous system at that point was primed enough to let the
Mm.
next layer come up
Yeah.
that you could deal with.
Mm.
So isn't that interesting that when the nervous system
Yeah.
is ready, then it can release the next level? Like if all the chaos came to you now in one go, it would probably shut
Yeah.
down and die. Like the human body wouldn't be able to survive that. So it
Yeah.
almost comes in pieces when you're ready. But again, trusting that that's part of the evolution, that's part of the journey.
It's what an intelligence our bodies have. No, this is like
Mm.
I hear this a lot, and I would also relate that to my experience now. Like it must be because somehow my system can recognize there's a certain level of safety that's required to go to this depth, because the shaking is so strong. If I don't have enough of a foundation in my being, like you said, I probably would just like meh, fall over or die, or go into like a kind of, I mean, I do sometimes wonder if like certain kinds of psychosis and certain kinds of breakdowns, I mean, breakdowns can be necessary. What I'm experiencing is definitely some kind of breakdown, but ultimately, like in somatic experience, they speak about titration. This like this it's a process, I think, in like chemical laboratories of like drop by drop. You can't pour all of the liquid into the other thing. It will kind of create an explosion. It has to be like drop by drop, and that that is actually um, how our systems can really integrate healing, and that trauma, they even talk about like trauma is anything that happened too fast, too soon, and too much. I think there might be another one. So in that sense of like, if we were to feel everything all at once, it actually can just create more trauma on top of the trauma and be building instead of kind of unraveling. So it's to deeply respect our pace and our capacity, and at the same time to like really honor and celebrate ourselves when the things are coming up, because it's like, wow, thank you to my system and thank you to myself that must be ready to face this, to feel this, to go there, to do the work.
Hmm. One thing that came up for me a few months ago only, and it's still fresh, I'm still sitting with this, is this whole idea of grieving our old selves and letting go of the life that we once had, the identity similar to what we've kind of spoken about. But what I realized was, or maybe what I was ready to realize, the message that came through was, whilst you're in the process of letting go, on the other side of that same coin is celebration, because you're creating the space for something new to be birthed at the exact same time
Mm,
that you're letting go. So the letting go and the entry of something new is happening simultaneously. So it's almost exciting to think of it in
mm,
that way, that I'm clearing the way for something new to be born now.
mm,
And I actually had the privilege of, when I left my role back in April, I went to Austin, Texas for a while, and I saw a close friend of mine, and he sat with me on a journey with Wachuma. And I guess the seed of this idea came up then. But in one of the ceremonies, I was crying a lot, and I didn't know why. I was like, where are these tears coming from? Like, there's nothing I'm sad about. Like, I don't get it.
mm,
Um, and so I just left it. I didn't judge it. I didn't try and analyze it.
mm,
And the image that dropped into my consciousness maybe weeks later, when someone asked me how Austin was, I was like, oh, the dots just connected. And the crying almost felt like when a new baby is born, it cries. And I was like, I've just been born into a
mm,
new life. I've just been birthed into a new life. That's why I resonate so much with what you said
mm,
about being in the birth canal. Like, I felt that. And it does feel
mm.
like it's the perfect symbolism. And it just doesn't happen once. Where the death and rebirth cycle happens continuously through our lives if we're conscious of it and we allow it to happen, because you can quite easily suppress it, like you said, the
Yeah,
drinking, drugs, smoking, and all of these things with the right intention can also be fine in good balance. But if you're using it to suppress and to avoid or escape something, then you're never really allowing the natural germination of life to happen. And so you don't actually have the level of evolution that you probably could have.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
Um,
there's a couple of things I thought of when you were talking. Just when you said about the death and the birth actually being essentially the same thing. It's like it's almost like the two sides of the same coin. But I've sometimes had it when watching the sunrise, I find, or the sunset. Like I'm watching, okay, say I'm watching the sunset, I'm watching the death, the death of the day. But on the other side, in exactly the same moment, the sun is there is the birth happening. And this is, for me, this is what you're talking about. Like, wow, so I can stand on this side, and it's really important to stand on both sides. It's not just, oh, look on the bright side and like, oh yeah, I'm being birthed. It's like, if we don't grieve, if we don't really enter the pain and all that comes with this energy of grief and loss, and really allow that process of letting go, it's not whole. It's not complete. There is We can't make space for it. And there's a lot of amazing people who work with grief, and I'm just thinking of this book called of Grief and Praise. I think it's called Of Grief and Praise by Martin Pretchell. And it's exactly what you said. Like he says, like, grief and praise, or celebration. Praise can also, you can also put in the word celebration. He says they're the two chambers of the heart. Doo-dum, doo-dum. One is praise and one is, or celebration, and one is grief, and they coexist. He also says they share the same bed. They are, to truly grieve is praising. It's like if someone dies, to truly grieve that loss, we actually are celebrating their life, celebrating who they were. And that's the same in our processes. It's like we give more, we enter into more aliveness, like that crying baby. Why does the baby cry when it's born? Because like that's actually what brings them into life. Like that's what makes them breathe. That's what makes their blood flow. Like it's actually really important part of being alive. There's a beautiful metaphor in that, and we know it's a classic. Like the deeper that we can feel our pain and our sorrow, the more capacity for joy, the deeper our joy. And those of us, or those times, we all have these numb moments, or some people live a whole numb life because it's just too much. Like, but if we lose the grief, we lose the other side. We lose that capacity to, we lose our, or look at children. I mean, children are the perfect, I have a 3-year-old, and it's like, wow, he can in one moment be crying like like really like something awful's happened, devastation, and then like finished, and then it's like complete full joy again. And this is this nakedness, this is this true essence that we were speaking about at the beginning. This is essentially, we are still that. We just kind of, we accumulate lots of stuff that kind of like weighs it down a bit, and sure, we learn how to have a capacity to hold those big expanse of emotions. But the sad thing is we grow, what is it that they say about growing down? Oh no, what's that beautiful phrase about turning into adults? And I can't remember what it is, but actually, like, children can be our inspirations, how to be really in the present moment and just feel what it is to be alive. And that's the blessing, the tears and the joy and all of it.
So going back to the what's the word, the curiosities that you had and how your mom nurtured that, do you see anything coming up like that for Owen? And have I pronounced his name right as well?
Arwen, yeah. Yeah, you
Okay.
haven't quite pronounced his name right. I mean, it's a tricky one because the truth is he's utterly obsessed with tractors. It's
There's a start.
like seriously, it's kind of like, oh, you're really obsessed with tractors. Like tractors is just the thing. And I never at some point went like, I'm gonna, make my child be obsessed with tractors because he's a boy and that's what boys do. Like, no, I try and take him to the forest sometimes and let's build a house for the fairies. And he's just like, I'm not interested in fairies. Like, show me a big tractor. But at the same time, there is a teaching in that, because it's what you were saying about this I don't know if it's an approach or a kind of ethos of the Montessori, of not steering our children in the direction that we think they should go or would like them to go. And with Arwen, there's a good lesson there, because I'm like, of course, I would love my child to be creative, or something kind of alternative. Like, I don't want him to end up being, I don't know, a bank manager or something. I have my judgments and my stories about what I would like him to do and what I don't want him to do. But actually, how do I, as a mother, really hold that space for his spirit, like a plant, just to follow that light of his soul that's somehow guiding him, like not to shine my own lights. Oh, come this way, come this way. Like, or just allow him to go in that direction. That is the truth of his soul, without my projections, without my ideas. And it's easier said than done. And I just see, yeah, I do respond. If he loves tractors, then I allow him to love tractors, and I do respond to that. And I do also encourage him to sit down and paint with me and stuff, but he's not so interested in. And he's kind of interested in. Um, but yeah, that's again a great letting go and trusting our trusting our children, and providing them the freedom and the open space for them to explore. And as time comes, I'm sure I will respond. I mean, he's only 3 years old, but those chapters will come when he's older. And
What do you find most challenging as a parent? Is it what you just said, or is there anything else that comes to your mind?
no, definitely it's not that. um, what I find most challenging is how our own children, it seems like, have this perfect ability of pressing on our trigger points. And I once heard someone say it like, um, having children is like looking into the mirror of our own childhood trauma. So there's something about that constellation that can really, really trigger those old places of the self, the ways that we were parented, the ways that we weren't parented, the experiences we had. And essentially, it's a bit like what I experience, and this is the most challenging thing, is like my child shows me my inner child. And it's like, it's similar in a relationship. I think we also can speak about intimate relationships do a similar thing. You know, it's like, whoa, you're showing me that mirror that I like really didn't think I had the capacity to behave like that. Like, wow, I didn't know I had that kind of level of impatience in me. Or, oh wow, I didn't know I could had the capacity to shout. Like, I don't shout at anyone apart from my child. I was shouted at so much as a child that it's like really a thing I put a lot of effort into. But every now and then I just get triggered, and it explodes. And that's the most challenging aspect, being confronted with myself through my child. And it's a lot about my nervous system, and just seeing, wow, when my nervous system is calm and regulated, my capacity as a mother, and to hold that space with a calm, more neutral, you know, non-reactive, non-emotional presence, I can do that. But the fact is, my nervous system is incredibly dysregulated, has been wired and programmed like that from my childhood. And that's the medicine, the big medicine my son is giving me, is like a massive, like, here, Ayla, is your work. Like, here is your nervous system. Look how dysregulated you are. Look how much your system is just in this kind of absolute panic, high stress response to the tiniest of things. And like, because he's my child, and because I love him, and because I'm devoted to trying my best as a mother, it makes me have to find a way to do that work in a way that I have never done in my life until now. And this is a big medicine. It's the most uncomfortable thing, but it's the most, feels like the most valuable, precious work I can do, not just for him, it's for myself. It's really a strong medicine.
It's a gift. It's a gift to yourself, because it's as I've done the work myself. Through that journey, I've realized part of my my gift or my purpose or the thing that I feel most drawn to, there are a few things, but one of them, which came up unexpectedly, was being able to hold the space to have these conversations with other people. And I was like, it's hard enough me facing it on my own and doing this, which, first of all, I don't even know where this inclination is coming from. But
Mm,
it was. And I was like, I
mm,
don't have the money to pay for this, that, the other, the experiences that would enable
mm,
me to then have the external help, I guess. But it wasn't a logical reason. It was a very deep intuitive
mm,
calling to explore what was on the other side of that door. And then I did it, and I was like, this is the beginning of something exciting. It's scary, but the beauty of it is it's not scary enough for me to back away from it, because the excitement of
yeah,
what could be on the other side
yeah,
is always more. And the scariness never really goes away,
yeah,
because we're human beings. Like, we're not made to be fearless creatures. I don't think fear ever really goes away. You just learn to bring it to the table and have tea with it and to get to know it. And like, okay, this is just
yeah,
another voice. I get it. You're gonna
yeah,
come for the ride. You're gonna come on the ride with me. I'm not gonna abandon you. I'm gonna honor you, but I'm still gonna move forward. I'm not gonna allow anything to stop my adventure of what's on the other side of all the many doors that may present themselves. Um, I don't know where I was going with that, but it just reminded me as you were talking that the calling to do the inner work, when it oh yeah, that's what I was saying, when it comes up, it was it came up in the most unexpected way. But then I realized, actually, this is actually a journey that not many people go on. It's not the norm, and it does take a level of courage. It is the path of courage, but it's also
mm,
the path of discovering your gift. Because you may find,
mm,
I've accomplished so many things. I've become a parent, I've traveled the world, I've done whatever the X amount of accomplishments that you and I can say, or that anyone listening can say. But is that your best work, though? Is the
mm,
best yet to come? That's just a question. Is the best yet to come? Because it may well
mm,
be on the other side of the unknown, the other side of the bridge that you haven't yet walked, or that you're in the process of walking. Because you the only source of comparison you have is everything you've done up to now, and what you see other people doing. Um, and so really, that's not really a gauge on all the possibilities that await in the unknown. And that's where my
mm,
excitement comes in, because I'm like, I'm not scared enough to stop myself, because the excitement of what could be is far more. And I always use death as a perspective. Going back to this death and rebirth, the ultimate finish line for this body is death. But when I kind
mm,
of project myself to the end, I'm like, when I'm looking back, what are the things that I want to feel about my life? And I want it to feel like an adventure. I don't want there to be any what ifs. I want
mm,
there to be a collection of great stories, a story of courage, a story of discovery, a story of coming home. But how can I have the benefit of feeling that way in the end if I don't walk that path now? And so then I have to do it every day the best I can. Every day is not going to be this big courageous take over the world type situation, but do the best you can where you are, and
mm,
just remember that you're human, right?
mm, mm. And to be very loving with what version of our best comes through on some days. It's
Yeah.
this like being motivated. There's a very fine line there, isn't there? Of like, um, I see this a lot with myself at the moment in the process that I'm in. Like, the part of me that really wants to give everything I can, do my best, show up, do it right, do it well, and like my idea of what would be proof that I'm doing the best I can, and that's basically like being better already, like being well already. And it's really hard to meet that place that's like, oh, but I'm doing the best I can and I'm still not better. You're like, what? So I must be failing, basically. So remembering that sometimes the best we can doesn't look like what our mind might want it to look like. Sometimes it's those days of like, wow, this is my best, and it's like seems really kind of unproductive, or to kind of like trust that version that comes through in each day. And it's also to not slip in the other direction, is it? Oh, this is my best, and my best is just like not bothering and not doing the things that are good for me, and just like numbing myself out and looking at my phone for like 12 hours or it.
Mm. Yeah, it's really just like kind of grounding yourself enough to be sensitive to your own needs, basically, is what I found. Because then you're not having to live up to this grandiose expectation of I need to be productive 12 hours a day, bang out like 50 albums and 50 songs. And if I'm not doing that, or I'm not writing, or I'm not brainstorming, then I'm unproductive. And where's my next hit going to come from? Whatever it is,
Exactly.
depending on the next field. But there might
Yeah.
be a day where you're just like, I want to rest. Like in the pause is when the growth and the germination and the expansion happens. And you can, again, going back to nature, you can see that in nature. When you look at a plant or a tree, it's not growing physically in front of you, but you come back a year from now, it's going to be different. So there's
Mm,
all, and you take a microscope to it, you'll see there's always
mm,
some activity happening. There is, but to the
mm,
naked eye, there isn't. And in our minds, I think we live in a society where we've conditioned ourselves to think if you're not kind of on the hamster wheel, then you're not making any progress. And that's not really, so then it begs the question, what's your definition of progress or success? It doesn't have to
mm,
be being
mhm,
on 12 hours a day, resting
mm,
and slowing down. That's also part of the bigger journey, and trusting that actually all of these elements are going to add up to wherever I need to go, and whatever needs to be produced will be produced as a result of that.
mhm,
But really kind of just being sensitive to that, to our own needs, again, not the needs of others, but like our own, not even what the head is saying, but like the body. And
mm,
do I need to
mhm,
rest today? Or actually, do I feel inspired to do something today? From that space of
mm,
inspiration, what do I feel drawn to doing? Because then I feel like maybe the behavior is very different, because it's now inspired by
mm.
the expansion of the universe, or direction of the universe, versus this is what I think I should be doing. It's a lot of shoulds. And that's where we can beat ourselves up, because I'm like that. I want to be productive all day, every day, but it's just
Yeah,
not the case. And I
yeah,
have to allow myself to rest, to
yeah,
learn to reconnect to what that means to rest, not just physically, but mentally as well, letting go of the expectation of producing, creating, brainstorming.
yeah. I feel like you just have been speaking for me, like all of those words, and
Yeah.
probably for many people also listening. It's just like I do see that we, as a kind of global culture, well, particularly the kind of Western styled world, it's so programmed. Our culture is just so programmed into this version of is what is success, what is achieving, what is productive, what is best, the best versions, and our self-worth that is measured on that. And it's just all about like, do as much as you can, do it as fast as you can, make as much money as you can, ignore yourself as much as you can, feel as little as you can, like. And you see the I mean, if we look at like, if you were to kind of go into figures, statistics of chronic conditions, of suicide, of depression, of alcoholism, or all these kind of cultural um measuring, like measuring what is the standard and what is the norm, we are sick. The human race is really, really unwell, mentally, physically, emotionally. It's like this is a massive pandemic in itself, and yet it's just normal. It's just normal. You go to the doctor and like, oh, help me. Oh, just have some medication and just like get on with it and carry on as normal. Like, I've been to the doctor with this, with what I'm experiencing, and they just go like, it's chronic fatigue. You can't do anything about it. Here's a number, you can ring a therapist, and like, kind of good luck living your life. And it's like, wait a minute, like there are some massive things to be addressed individually, but it's culturally we we are this way for many reasons, and one of them is because we live in a world where we are trying to keep up with something that is impossible to keep up with, and it's getting faster and it's getting more, and we are just losing ourselves. And slowly, one by one, people are either on their own coming to this awareness and going, wow, what is my truth, and what is really in the alignment with myself, or our bodies are forcing us. And it sounds like you've been on that journey, I'm on that journey, where the body is just like, I am more intelligent than you are, and you are out there, the kind of like mind of our culture, this like crazy mad mental energy that's driving everything. Like, I know what you need, and my way of communicating to you is through physical sensations and emotions. So like, boom, here you go. And I'm gonna make it that if you don't listen to me, you have to listen to me. And that's to just deeply respect like the body intelligence versus the mind intelligence. Yes, the mind, there is a certain level of intelligence that's really, really helpful. We need our mind keeps us alive. Our mind is amazing. It has that when used in alignment. For me, it's all about this. It's like we're living in ways, and our whole society is living in this kind of mass disalignment of our mind intelligence and our body intelligence, like and that creates this kind of fractured space where all of this kind of sickness is being created, basically. And when we can come back into the two being in alignment and working alongside with one another, and essentially that alignment is like our truth of our heart and our soul. And I really trust that the body has a direct connection. It's not just the alignment of our body's needs, but it's also of our heart and our soul, and our kind of the truth of our life, of why we've come here. And I know this because this experience that I'm having in my physical body, yes, my body is asking for rest and gentleness, and for my nervous system to be regulated, and for me to not push myself. But it's not asking me to just lie down and not do anything. Like, I know that that doesn't make me feel better. I know that I'm not going to come back into full aliveness by just kind of resting my body and not fulfilling my soul's purpose. And I know that my body knows that, because my body keeps sending me messages in the form of these symptoms by saying like, yeah, it's good that you're resting, but like, I need you to sing. I need you to be creating. I need you to have connection with nature. I need you to have friendships. I need you to feel fulfilled on a kind of deeper level, not just physical. And this is amazing. I mean, it makes total sense. Like, here we are, our soul lives inside this body. It's our home. And it's not that we have these totally separate parts of ourselves. Like, we are somehow one being in this human being form. We have a soul in this body, and yet it's one. There is a level of communication, and even our mind. That's I feel if we are really in balance and wholeness, then our mind will be in this oneness. And I guess a lot of the sickness that we see is because there's kind of been like a severing of our minds to our bodies, our hearts and our souls. And it's this classic, like, it's like the headless chicken in reverse. Like, it's like the head of the chicken just like running around, just being a head,
Yeah.
like in this utter state of madness.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, yeah.
I feel like a lot of people are beginning to
The
I feel
headless
like a lot
chicken
of
in
people
reverse.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people are beginning to realize this in their own way now, slowly. Yeah. What So I'm curious, just to change gears a little bit. First of all, have you got a little bit more time? Because I know you need to pick Arwen up from school. Have you got? How are you doing for time?
My partner is picking him up. Yeah,
Okay, so we've
yeah,
got a
yeah.
little bit because there's
All
just a couple
fine.
of other areas
Josh will
I'm
pick him up.
curious about. Okay, cool. What part of the UK did you grow up in then?
A place called Hitchin. It's like north.
And I know where that
It's
is.
outside of London. It's like a town that sits above.
It's like near
You know where
Stevenage.
it is? It's really
Yeah.
not an exciting place. No offense, anyone who lives in Hitchin. Yes, it's
Yeah, I
like
had
yeah.
cousins that aunt and uncle that live in Stevenage, so not too far. What was that like for you, like that area? Because I've not lived in that area. I know of it, but like, what was that like growing up? And you being who you were at the time, what was like school and all that kind of stuff like as well?
I was really blessed to get a government funded place at a private school called St. Christopher's, which is it's an independent school, which as I understand, kind of is just like an independently created school with its own philosophy, a Quaker school, had this amazing philosophy of the students and of everyone being equal. So it was a self-government school. It had a kind of like system within the school where the pupils um, were essentially making decisions alongside the voices of the teacher, even the headmaster. So it was really super empowering. They had a lot of were like connected to a lot of projects around the world. Like I went to India when I was 16 and worked on NGO projects, and we traveled and worked in schools and like were really exposed to the outside world and encouraged to kind of yeah, encouraged to find our place and what motivated us and our role of somehow doing something good on the earth and this world. That's definitely what I experienced there. Maybe not everyone experienced that, but it focused on the arts. It was like quite relaxed about exams. It wasn't the priority, get as best grades as possible. The priority was like, how do we nurture these young people who are going to take over the world and go out there, and how do we help them to be really who they are and value who they are and value their truth? For me, it was an absolute blessing to go to that school. I loved school. I loved to go to school. I can't imagine if I'd gone to an ordinary school. I would have struggled. The area where I grew up was, I guess I didn't know anything else, but I do remember just waiting to like get out into the world. I just knew I'm going to finish school. I'm going to save some money. I had like 3 jobs, worked in like Pizza Express and a care home and something else, and made a load of money in a few months and just went traveling as soon as I could. And then I never really returned. Somehow my being had that hunger to discover the world, discover other cultures. I feel like I always had some sense of something more. Like I was really obsessed with Native Americans. Um, I'm just aware that we're actually when it's not to call them Native Americans, the First Nation people of America. When I was from a young age, I was kind of had this obsession with them, and it makes a lot of sense now as an adult. I didn't know why I loved them so much, but something in me was drawn to these other lives, these lives where people lived in a different way. And I kind of knew that this reality of life and home and school, and as a child, the world is quite small to you, isn't it? I knew that wasn't all there was here on this earth. Yeah.
Hmm. And did you feel drawn to any particular projects or subjects, like as you were going through school, that you felt like maybe contributed to traveling, or it was just like an out of the blue inspiration or calling?
Um, I do remember when I was young, I had an animal phase of being particularly passionate about um, animal rights and kind of anti-animal testing, um, and then it merged more into like I got very into human rights and um, protesting and kind of being active, like actively giving my voice into supporting various movements. Really, I for a moment in my life, I thought I would go into the direction of kind of human rights law, something like this.
Which is what I
Kind of
did basically.
mad to imagine. Is that what you did? Really?
Yeah, I studied law in Canterbury,
Wow.
Canterbury.
Oh,
So, because I was drawn to English
whoa.
literature, history, economics. So, yeah, I even though I'm not practicing now, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I
Mm.
would do it again. Like I loved learning about it. But there's just this
You did enjoy
discrepancy
it.
between, yeah, it was fun, but there's this discrepancy between the academic role and then what it's really like in the actual, practice of it. It's very different. So
Mm,
yeah, and kind of the whole
mm,
culture of that environment as well.
mm,
It's not necessarily the healthiest of places, especially if it's not what you feel most passionate about. It's going to feel like a drag,
mm.
which I know a lot of people have felt that way. So, but yeah, what was the first country that you then went on to traveling?
The first country was Fiji, these amazing islands. But when I first went traveling, I did the kind of classic like 6 month round the world kind of trip. That's all I really knew existed. I just knew I needed to travel, and that's what people did when they left school. You bought these round the world tickets and kind of went bing, 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 bing. And I went to Fiji for not so long, and then I went to New Zealand, and then I landed in Southeast Asia, and this was when I really remember like my eyes kind of properly starting to open because I was there. There's many travelers do this loop around Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand. So I was kind of in this circuit of many people like me traveling around. But I so quickly was like, the hell are we doing? Like, people are eating like weird pretend Italian pizza, like not even eating the food, the traditional foods, staying in hostels, like taking mushrooms, getting stoned, drinking, basically like doing what we do back at home, but in another country, and then like pointing cameras in everyone's faces. And it just felt so effed up. I was just like, this is not what I came here to do. It really broke my heart. I actually remember I wrote a song about this, of this kind of heartbreak of just realizing like this way of traveling consumption and the destruction actually that it was bringing to the cultures and the level of disconnection, and it was not what I was seeking. And
How
I
old were
made a
you at that time?
decision. I was 18.
Mm.
In that moment, I made the decision to kind of jump off the beaten track, and I honestly don't remember how, I somehow managed to end up in a remote Cambodian village where they'd never seen a white person. I got off the bus and they were like, people just like didn't speak. I think I had one point of contact who spoke a bit of English, maybe the English teacher at the school. And then I lived for a while in a family took me in, and I just like slept on the floor with them in their bedroom and was kind of teaching in the school. But it was more than that. It was more like I just wanted to really meet these people, and I wanted to feel that my contact with them was somehow an exchange. Like I don't think I particularly gave them, it wasn't a lot what I gave them, but um I wanted meaning. I wanted it to mean something for me, and ideally for the people I was in contact with. And from that point on, really, then I traveled in a very different way. Things changed, and I traveled for years, really, until I've still been traveling even these past years with my child. But Um, it's been much more about really learning and studying from these traditional cultures and indigenous people that I've been in contact with, and um, really deeply receiving what I'm learning as that as a kind of fuel, and ripening me in how I can then offer back to the world, and creating these kind of like weaving a web somehow, knowing that we're all connected, and we all have gifts for one another, and the the wisdom and the teachings and the richness and the beauty that so much of the more traditional cultures of this world have for us is just priceless and beyond. And I actually truly believe that there are some keys within the the way of their beingness and the way of their cultures and the teachings handed down through their ancestry, the wisdom from the earth, their songs, their medicines, their their rituals, their ceremonies. I really believe that these are very important keys for this time that we're in on earth, that we can turn to these people who are more connected to the old ways and to the earth. We can turn to them for guidance to hopefully find our way in a way of beauty in the challenges that we're in and that will come, for sure will come.
Were there any particular cultures that really drew you?
Yeah, so the all the native nations of North America have continued to draw me very, very strongly in my life. And Mexico is a land that I have a deep love for, and I've spent a lot of time there and meeting the different. They have various um, big like pockets of tradition there, and they're also very connected to the North America. And really, it's really the Americas, South America, the cultures of the indigenous people who live in the rainforest and work with the plant medicines, the
Mm,
Yawanawa, and yeah, these are the ones that
yeah,
somehow I have given my or I've walked the most in my life. But the truth is, all traditional and indigenous cultures just touch me so profoundly. And if life was infinitely long, I would love to go to Africa and go, I don't know exactly where, but go and dance and sing and explore the way they work with grief and the way they work with their ancestors, and go to Australia. They all touch me. I think every single one in a different way. I'm in absolute awe and um very humbled. Yeah.
yeah. Just before, um, the whole world shut down in 2020, I saw it as a blessing that my last trip actually, before that situation, was in Peru. And I was in Iquitos, and from there we took a boat into the jungle, and I went there for just over a week, I think, specifically in that spot. And we spent time working with ayahuasca, and that was a calling that I had at the beginning of the year. And so as the year, I booked it already and planned it, and then we went and we got to spend time with a lot of the native people of Peru, specifically in that part of the jungle. And it was the jungle's massive, hundreds and hundreds of miles, but that part of it. And the one thing is for sure, the energy is very different, first of all. So to allow yourself to bathe in that, there's something ancient about that. There's something that has a level of there's something that feels like it has a level of depth to it, that has no words, and you just bathing in it in itself is healing. But then, yeah, spending
Mm.
time with some of the natives who had kind of small communities where there'd be fruit and veg, and they'd do dancing and singing and kind of sell their jewelry and stuff. But then also we took part in some of the native like dances that they had and stuff. And I was just for one of them, I kind of took a seat and I was just observing. observing them. And some of these women were like, there was this men, women, different ages and stuff, and some of these women were topless, but there was, and what I was observing was the fact that there was no sense of judgment or shame. It was just like this honoring of the
Mm.
human body and the collective community that they are together. They didn't see themselves as separate. And it was just a feeling that I got, which I then took away, and kind of it sat with me as we came into 2020. I had a chance to now sit with it as the world became chaotic on the outside. There was a chance for you to become quiet on the inside, right? Because like the economy kind of slowed down to some extent. So yeah, that is beautiful, and I'm drawn to South America and all of those places, and that was my first time visiting. Then I was like, I'm definitely coming back, albeit maybe for a different reason, but there is a lot of depth to be explored there, if you're open to it, right?
Mm. Yeah, and just as you were talking, I was just feeling how um, one of the most profound aspects of being in contact with indigenous cultures, I imagine it's like this for everybody. This is how I feel it is. There is a sense inside of me of such a deep remembering beyond my own lifetime. It's like through being in contact with them, whether it's like you're describing them more like, just their lives, the way that they live, the way that the children run around, the way that the women smile at each other, the way that they sleep together, this village life, the way that they speak with the spirits, the way they can remember the plants, like very simple things. I feel like that place in us that is touched by it is the place in us that also remembers that is knows like, oh, this is who I am also. And yes, we would have had our own ways and our own cultures and our own traditions, very, very different, but there would have been, as we see if we look at indigenous cultures, there are threads that are very much intact that run between them. And of course, one of these main things is the relationship and ways of being with the earth. And someone rustling behind me.
Mm.
And so distracted me. Yeah, it's this coming home to ourselves, remembering who we really are beyond and beneath this huge machine of our culture and ways of being that are just like so far removed from the essence of our nature as animals, actually, as tribal people, as people who village people, you know,
As you
we
were talking, the image that came to mind was like, as you put yourself in these environments and you're exposed to this energy, or to those sorts of people, it's like a child that's in bed that's almost being woken up, right? And you go and wake up the child, to
mm,
remember who they are, and then you fall back into regular life and you go back to sleep almost, and it's almost
yeah,
like a brief awakening. There's something in you that's kind of beginning to sit up now, and then goes back to sleep if you choose to go back into regular routine and stuff. But then when you come back, you're not the same person that went either. So your baseline
yeah,
of awareness, your baseline of energy, your baseline of perception, whatever it is something shifted,
yeah,
albeit slightly. And that's maybe all you need on the dial, to just shift it slightly to become an entirely different being in the world and the way that you proceed.
yeah. And that will steer it, even if it's very subtle, it will have some kind of effect on our compass that's steering us in our life, because we carry, when things touch us, whatever experiences they are, we carry them with us. somehow we're shaped, we're formed. It's like it changes. It changes us. Like you're
Mm.
saying, we don't continue the same. Even if it becomes a memory somewhere, and sure, ultimately it'll be, it's up to us, and it's up to our soul path of how much these experiences can influence our lives. For me, certainly, it's been an absolute massive influence, and it's also not so easy to have received that influence, because one impact it's had on me is um somehow created this sense of like not being willing to accept this way of life that I feel is kind of handed on a plate by our culture, which is like you live in your house, you lock your door, you don't know your neighbors' names, like your children go to school and then they come home and you go to the shops, and I'm just like, this is not what I came here for. And I mean that like in this life, but also kind of on a deep, deep level, that place in me that is like, I don't know, this memory thousands of years old in me that came here to be with my tribe, to be in my traditions, to be in contact with the earth every single day, to see the children running around all playing together. And it's not so easy to feel that really alive in me, and then look at my life and go, but I don't know how to live that, because I'm not those indigenous people that I've spent time with. I don't have my tribe, I don't have my village in the same way. How to kind of really integrate and create and build these new ways of doing that. And there's so many people doing amazing things and exploring this, and community projects and all kinds of things that are being birthed from, carrying these threads and keeping alive our nature, and yet integrating it into the world that we live in now, the technology, the modern reality. But it's hard, I gotta say. It's like sometimes I go, God, it must just be so much easier to kind of not even be aware that something else is this classic ignorance is bliss. Like, to not be aware of it, yeah, it's there's a simplicity to that. But I'm very glad I'm aware of it, and I trust ultimately that I will find a way to create that in my life, where I can go, yeah, okay, I'm not an indigenous person. I maybe don't have my tribe, my village, but like I have something. I have my community. I have my relationship with the earth. I have my, my ceremonies and my people, and we sing and we dance together and do the things that ultimately are like our soul food.
Mm. So you left and you spent time kind of in the southeast around 18 or so. What were what did your 20s kind of consist of? Was it just more of that? How did that unfold for you?
Oh, such big, crazy adventures. I was just like on a wild rampage. I studied art for a year, and then me and my friend Susie Rowe, we decided to um kind of abandon all our university dreams, and make music together. And we lived in a van and we traveled around and played music at festivals and hitchhiked around Europe. And um it was a combination of a time of like having as wild adventures as I could. Like, we did these long walks across England, sleeping in the forest and singing in exchange for everything, like really using music as a currency, like the bards, like the old way where the bards would travel. And then in those years I also started to travel again more. That's when I started to travel to South America, went to Mexico. I traveled with horses there and lived really, really super wild, gypsy life with these beautiful animals, like 20 horses and 15 people traveling through the wilds of Mexico, up in the mountains, and just living outside, like like wild animals. It was really something in me needed to kind of revive and contact this wild essence of my being, to really experience that. Like, had almost no possessions, probably lost my shoes, like all my clothes were like, we were just washing in the rivers and sleeping in the fields of our horses and just traveling and doing shows in exchange for money. And it was like what you were just saying, like taking the clothes off. I needed to just kind of really strip myself back. I needed to kind of create this big space around me to rediscover myself with this, in this spaciousness. And it was also like that in those years were when the healing really, really began, because I started to meet myself like, ooh, wow, that's all the grief that I carry, and that's all the pain, and that's all the stuff, and that's my personality, weird aspects, and it's an uncomfortable journey, as you know, to shed our skins. And but it was very, very important for me, the the lands where I were, the people that I was meeting, to be just one thing, to be around groups of people that were not of one nation. For me, this has just been amazing medicine. When you travel to countries where there's kind of like, there's scenes of people traveling, and you sit there and you're with like 20, all people from different countries, 20 different countries, and there's a real liberation there of like, oh, my programming is an English person, and expansion that can happen. And then also to be in contact with the cultures, some more indigenous, but even just the different cultures, the learning, the different ways of being, the different ways of expressing, of using your face, the different ways of for me, like the rituals and the ceremonies has been an absolute massive part, and still is, of my life, to discover their ways of praying, of celebrating, of going through initiations, of healing, of curing.
Are there any particular rituals or ceremonies that stand out to you that you saw?
Yeah, so again, there's various ceremonies from North America, particularly from the Lakota tradition. So the Vision Quest and the Sun Dance were two very profound ceremonies that I discovered first in Mexico, and have continued to be a part of my life when they're able to be. And they are, there's no words really to even begin to describe. They're things you can't describe, these experiences. You can't describe the detail, the meaning, the purpose, the intention that goes into every single tiny thing that is happening, every single detail that is created, the significance, the connection to the ancestries, of how things were handed down, their way of carrying songs, the way of sharing songs, the way of making fire, the way of working with herbs. It's just such beauty. It's like, I would just cry. I still, every time, I will weep with beauty, because I'm just so touched by the depth of meaning with which these rituals are created, and also, as I understand, with which people would have lived their lives. And this is something we are starved of, real meaning. Like, what does this really, really mean? And in the everyday, in the way that we can sit and eat our food, and in the way that we harvest our food, and the way that we can say thank you to our waters, the way that we live together and pray together, in the way that we can look at the open sky and feel something way more than ourselves. Is we are, yeah, there's a kind of barrenness of meaning. I don't know if that makes sense. Barrenness of meaning. There's a barren wasteland, really, is how it feels to me often. And yet, saying that, when you go closer, you'll see, like, wow, the earth, she's never barren. And even in our culture, there is so much. beauty sprouting up between the cracks in the concrete, and the flowers and the vines that are growing, and the people just doing amazing things. But you kind of have to make a bit more effort. You have to kind of find your way and look under the stones. Whereas the ways that these people would have lived, that it's just was just there. And they learned it from birth, and they learned it from their elders who learned it from their elders who learned it from their elders. And they kind of had something to hold on to that I imagine must give so much strength, you know, if you're holding on to that kind of that cord that goes back and back through your bloodline, back and back and back and back and back. That gives a lot of strength to walk through the challenges of this life, which indigenous cultures have gone through horrendous atrocities. Our own indigenous cultures have. If you look at the stories of England or United Kingdom or of Europe, you know, what happened to the indigenous peoples here is massacre, murder, absolute bloodshed. And it's like very, very strong to acknowledge. And yeah, it just makes me think. Someone once said to me, a Lakota man, he said, look, we're not sharing our ways with you so that you can be Lakota. You're not Lakota. Like, that's not the intention here. We open up our ceremonies, which is a massive thing that they do, that considering what white man did to them, just to acknowledge that is, there's such profundity in that in itself. Like, wow, you can reach the point where you can open up your most sacred things, your most sacred, share your tools of prayer, the most sacred that they have, that they managed to keep intact through all that happened to them, that they share this with the people that committed these crimes against them is utterly beautiful. And he said, we share it with you. It's like inviting you to our hearth fire, that you, not that you stay sitting here and abandon your own lands, but you take a coal from this fire and you carry it back to your own lands, and you ignite the fires of your own lands, and remember your ways and recreate your ways and rewrite the songs of your land, and find your ways to sing and to pray and bring this meaning back to this wasteland that sadly we've put a lot of energy into.
Reminds me
Creating.
of the hero's journey, right? You go on the travels, you go on the adventure, and you take back the blessings that you picked up along the way, and the awareness that you picked up along the way, and you bring that back in the hopes to improve the life, your own life, and the lives of those that you touch.
Mm.
And the other thing is interesting that came up as you were talking was, um, there was you were talking about, you know, holding onto the cord and kind of feeling the what's the right word, um like feeling almost in awe of all those that came before you, and that you're a part of that lineage now, like you are a product of all those ancestors that once lived before you. And it reminded me of an article that I read about a woman named Claudette Colvin, who was actually the person who sat um, at the front of the bus before Rosa Parks did, 9 months before she did it. And she wasn't widely spoken about for
Uh,
various political reasons, because she was pregnant out of wedlock and had fairer, darker skin, and she wasn't kind of she wasn't the typical poster girl that the civil rights movement would have liked to use. So her name went under the radar. Anyway, she did an interview a few years ago, and they said to her, why, kind of what kept you in the seat, why did you stay in that seat? Because I mean, there's a lot of violence that could have been inflicted on you, right? And she said, history had me glued to the seat. I couldn't move. Like, there was this feeling of okay, so my laptop just died, so let me just pick up from where I left off. So Claudette Colvin, so the just the weight of, in a positive way, the weight of her ancestors, right? She could feel that there's a level of effort that's been put in for me to eventually come to this place that I'm in right now. And so then you just feel really connected to a particular action. And for her, it was that. And yeah, I don't know if that feeling kind of resonates when you talk of the Lakota tribe.
Definitely. I mean, when you just said that, it particularly made me suddenly feel like, all those men and women who were burned or were drowned, or it's like millions and millions, from our lands over here in Europe. I sometimes feel like, wow, if they died, like, what was their death for if I don't carry it on? Like, there's a kind of sense of, I mean, duty has a kind of funny feeling to it, doesn't it? But it's like a sense of honoring and responsibility. I would say responsibility is maybe more the word. Like, we somehow have a responsibility to live onward the lives and all that was offered by the lives behind us, and all that they experienced, all the tears that were cried, and all the beauty, and all the births, and all the deaths. But particularly, it feels like when there's murder there in the bloodline, when there's death there, that we can kind of turn around to our ancestors and say, it's okay, like, you didn't die in vain. Like, that was a sacrifice, that was an offering. Somehow that happened, and God knows I carry that flame, and I carry it onwards, and I pass it to my children, and I keep something alive, do my part in this kind of the step, as the bloodline, as this thread unravels, the path unravels.
Mm, yeah. When did you feel like your like music was the thing in the sense of like I want to actually move forward in this direction? Was it like a slow turning of the dial, or did you feel like actually this is something that I now want to pursue because of a particular event or feedback or an experience that you had?
I had a moment of that, this moment when I said about me and my friend Susie, we left university and said, let's just do music together. That was my first moment. But I was also a bit like one foot in, one foot out still. I was kind of like, yeah, I don't know. I also I was very creative with my hands. I loved being a crafts person, and I was kind of nourishing both at the same time. And then I had a moment when I was about 21 where I kind of abandoned music. Very complex, like, to go into that as a whole story in itself. It was a very painful death, one of my kind of deaths, dark nights, and I needed to really let go of everything, and let go of music, and let go of my identity connected to music, and kind of, and that was when I left for the first time to South America. And after that, it wasn't so much a kind of, during that time, I then picked up music again through working with the plant medicines, and kind of found a new way of moving with it. And I don't remember going like, with my mind, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to make this my work. It was just like, it was just love, that it it's like, I guess it's a bit like when we fall in love with someone, like, there's a part in us that decides it before our mind goes, oh yeah, okay, yeah, let's live together, and let's, like, marry or whatever, and walk our lives together. It's just like, do you know what? There's something in me that already decided this. And I would say it's like that. And then my life, yeah, my life is, I've had no choice really. It's like, what else would I give my life to? And I
Mm,
still, like you said at the beginning, I resonated with that a lot. Like, I don't know what forms it will take from here, and what work I might start doing. And, there's the workshops I do, and that's kind of a big open space. And I also see with my music now, like, I don't know how the songs are going to come, or when I next record. Like, I might just do something completely different, and it's ever changing and finding new expressions because I'm ever changing, and that's in the end it's me coming through in sound and my conversations with the beyond me, and that's different in every single moment and has new faces and new chapters and new outfits and
Was Dive Into Water your first album?
no, I have secret albums before that are hidden and unreleased and not allowed to be heard. Only like the old school people from many years ago, you know, there's probably a few out there, but no,
Yeah.
there were. I think the first one I did when I was about 17 or something. I don't even know if I have a copy of that. It's quite sad actually. I don't know what happened to that.
Is that's been recorded but not published anywhere, right?
Yeah, I haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was before.
So your first official one, I guess, is Dive Into Water. And how does that how so do
Yeah.
you did you release on your own and you just felt like it's the time is now, because obviously you've got open source platforms like Spotify, for example, or did you sign under someone and kind of have to seek someone out to manage you and stuff like that and give you
No,
kind of
back then when
direction?
I released that album, it was like full independent artist style. I do everything myself. You know, I do the hard work. It's like was a lot of hard work, I gotta say, and a massive commitment to just something that I knew I had to do. It was the most important thing for me. I just knew I have to record these songs, I have to get them out there. I did a big public fundraiser and paid for it like that, and just yeah, a lot of learning along the way. And it's hard work, you know. My hat's off to all the independent artists who were independent artists or still are. It's a big thing.
How did you come up with the name Dive Into Water?
It's one of the lyrics in the song, and I think that many of those songs were from a chapter in my life. I mean, over a few years, like 5 years or something. It's just, it was, and to be honest, it still is a theme for me in my life that I just feel like I'm spending a lot of my time and my journey as a human diving into the waters of myself. That's kind of what it means, really. This like the inner ocean, dive into water, and there's something there in those words that's kind of, it's not like falling into water. You know, like, even though it does feel like that often, like oh splash again, there I am. There's my video, there's
There you go. It's diving
there's
is
something
more there's it's
intentional.
like exactly. Yeah,
It's
that's what I was gonna say.
active,
It's
it's
intent.
conscious, it's i'm going I'm going here, and I'm going to learn and to receive and to journey with all that is in there. And that's really, it's a big theme of my music still, and certainly was of the album, the theme.
And how did you learn to speak Spanish? Is that part of your? I was going to also ask you what your background is in terms of your parents and your grandparents, etc. Because your Spanish sounds flawless. I don't speak Spanish. I don't
No,
understand
it's
it, but it
not.
sounds.
It's a secret, but don't tell people. I don't speak that good Spanish. I speak like very basic. I can get by basically in South America. I can understand and communicate what I need to, but it is very simple. But somehow there's this miracle that when I sing,
Yeah, I was going to say when you sing, it almost becomes like it's a native language.
it's lots of people assume I'm Spanish or something, and I go, really? Don't I have a really strong English accent? But I just, I don't know, it just started happening. I learned from my travels in South America, and it's just another, it's a bit like another channel that I dial into with the Spanish songs. It's really like
Mm,
another source. There's like another character, another energy, another spirit that is coming through, and I can't really explain it. And I can't, you know, sometimes I go, oh, I want to write a Spanish song. I can't choose. It's not like, do I want to do this song in English or do I want it in Spanish? It's just like, this is a Spanish song. They come like that. Like the spirit is a Spanish spirit or something, you know. I can't,
wow.
it's not like giving
No.
birth to a baby and going, do I want this to be from this country or this country? It's like Yeah, I love, for me, I love the mystery, and I love the things that I can't explain, especially regarding my music and how they come and what's going on there. It's mystery. It's
And
mystery.
what about the music? Do you compose or produce any of the music, or have you got people to do that? And like, how do you choose the like the songs that you, I guess, feel connected to, and the ones that you want to draw lyrics to versus that you passed up on, if you passed up on, I don't know.
Well, they always come with lyrics. They don't come without lyrics. So when a song comes, it's like it comes as its package, in that sense. And it's a difficult process. It's like selecting. It's a bit like at school. Like I stand them all in line. Like, which are the songs I'm carrying right now? And for a lot of them, there's just a sense of readiness. It's like some of the children, the song children, they kind of step forward and they're like, I'm
Mm,
ready. And it's really, with some of them, it's really clear. And some of them to the point are they're like, Ayla, I'm really ready. Like, I'm over ready. Can you like, please give me a home? And I'm like, and I have that now. I have some songs that are really tugging. And then there's other songs which are like, I could be ready. Yeah, I'm ready. And then there's some which are like, I'm definitely not ready. And it's quite an intuitive thing, and it's difficult because I feel there's more songs than I have capacity to record. It's like the songs come faster than I have capacity to be recording them, especially as I'm a mother with a 3-year-old. And there are old songs which I've never recorded that are still going, Ayla, like, I need a home. And I'm like, oh, you're really old. I can't record you. But yeah, I'm in this process right now. Okay. All these songs, how do I honor you? And they ask for a home. They ask to be recorded.
mm,
They like it. I really get this feeling like they like it. It's like they're like, okay, now we have our home. Now we're safe. Because essentially they're kind of not they they don't exist unless I'm singing them in
yeah.
this audible reality. And I don't sing all my songs. I leave them behind at some point. I don't sing the old ones. And they don't feel safe with that. They're like, give us a home and then we will exist for as long as, you know, as long as that exists.
Are there any songs that scare you to sing that you haven't yet
Yeah.
given
Yeah,
text?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, the ones that are more about the most tender songs, the most vulnerable, the songs that are more of my darkness in them. They those ones I'm careful with when I sing them. I have to feel safe. It's like with ourselves, we have to feel safe
Mm.
to share. Certain parts of ourselves need more safety.
I feel maybe on the other side of this journey that you're on now, those songs will then have a home. We'll be
Mm,
ready to have a home.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds, how the work, how your work, how your artistry unfolds as you move through this
yeah.
next phase.
Yeah.
Um, but um, yeah, do you have any kind of background that's not British, so to speak, on the root?
My mum is German, and her ancestry is more from Eastern Europe. I think at some point was from Russia and then kind of moved over Poland and Eastern
Mm.
Germany. And my dad's side of the family has his uh his so my grandfather is actually from Argentina, from South America. Um, but probably was from Italy. I don't actually have much kind of British in me.
Oh, right, okay.
I think I would love to do these DNA tests to kind of really find the old,
Mm.
like, yeah, yeah,
Mm.
mixture.
Yeah. Do you come back to the UK often? Are you in the UK now?
We've
Or
moved back to the UK now.
oh,
We're
okay.
back. We're
Yeah.
back.
You have you are you in London, outside of London?
No, we're down in Devon,
Oh, right. Okay.
down
Nice.
in the
That's a nice place.
wild.
Yeah, Devon, Cornwall. I was there maybe a few years back. I think it was 2000. Well, actually, maybe about even longer than that, maybe 10 years ago. But yeah,
Wow.
it's really nice, really nice. Pace of life is different compared to London, that's for sure. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, well, to wrap this up, I just want to honor the fact that you still showed up to this conversation with the many reschedules that we had. Obviously, what you're going through now is extremely important, but yeah,
Mm.
I feel like we've had a beautiful conversation. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been very beautiful to not have been asked all the kind of there's certain questions that I often get asked, but to have really spoken from really this moment and the very kind of like the real process that's happening right now has felt it's just felt very healthy to be
Mm,
speaking this and exploring this with you. So thank you.
mm. And what's the best place for people to connect with you or your work, if they want to kind of dive into that a bit more?
I guess my website, which is aylaschafer.co.uk, and from there you can kind of source off into whatever direction you like, whether it's videos or Instagram or listening to the music. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, and it would be great to connect again, maybe on the other side of this journey that you're on.
Yeah. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.